So everybody, we're both Godspell veterans, and we're going to attempt to do one of the best songs in the show, All for the Best, a cappella, and just have fun.
And using your original cane.
My original cane from the Broadway production.
This is the first show I ever did, and it was, and I'm holding, this is amazing.
You're holding history.
That's it. It's like holding you, Bob. No offense. You look great. Okay. What key are we in?
When you
feel sad or under a curse, your life is bad, your prospects are worse. Doo-ba-doo-doo-ba-doo-doo. Your wife is sighing, crying, and your olive tree is dying. Temples are graying and teeth are decaying and creditors weighing your purse.
That's true.
Your mood and your wardrobe are both a deep blue. You bet that Job had nothing on you.
Don't forget.
Don't forget that when you get to heaven, you'll be blessed. Yes, it's all for the best. Okay, show me how it's done.
Some men are born to live at ease, doing what they please, richer than the bees are in honey, never growing old, never feeling cold, pulling pots of gold from thin air. The best in every town, best shaking down, best in making mountains of money. They can't take it with them, but what do they care? They get the center of the meat, cushions on the seat, houses on the street where it's sunny, summers by the sea, winter's warm and free, all this and we get the rest.
Oh!
But who is the land for, the sun and the sand for? You guess it's all for the best.
Okay, here we go.
Some men are born to live at ease, doing what
or under a curse. Your life is bad.
Never growing old, never feeling cold.
Your prospects are worse.
Thin air.
Your wife is
sighing, crying,
and your olive tree is dying.
They can't
Temples are
take
graying
it
and
with
teeth are
them,
decaying
but
and
what
creditors
do they
weighing
care?
their purse.
They
Mood
get
in
the
your
center
robe
of the meat, cushion on the seat,
and both
house
the
on the
deep
street
blue.
where it's sunny.
You bet that
Never growing
Job
old, never feeling
had
cold,
nothing on you.
thin
But
air.
don't forget that when you
go to heaven, you'll be blessed. Yes, it's all for the.
You must never be distressed.
Yes, it's all for the. Someone's got to be oppressed.
Yes, it's all for.
Someone's got to be undressed.
That's it.
Yes, it's all for the best.
Ba-dum-ba-dum-bum. Hey.
That was such a James. Between you and I, we've done many Broadway shows.
We have.
What was your favorite?
If Then. It was my entree. I'll say my re-entree after Crybaby, which was my first Broadway show. I finished and quickly ran back to Los Angeles because the show did not do so great, and found myself. I remember stepping into the first rehearsal at New 42nd Street and just looking at, like, it's Idina Menzel, it's LaShawne's, Jen Colella, Michael Greif directing, Tom Kidd and Brian Yorkie writing. It was Anthony Rapp. It was like all of my heroes. The first Broadway show I saw LaShawne's in Ragtime.
Wow.
And which I didn't even figure out until much later. I was sitting in her dressing room and I went, wait, when did you? She said, oh, I did it right at the end. I was like, oh, I saw you.
She did it here too.
Yeah. And she was so wonderful. So for me, it was that moment of where the little kid in me got to find himself in the room with all of these people that he looked up to, and that then became such dear friends.
Yes.
You know, Idina is just so close to my heart.
And I think my favorite performance of yours was You Don't Know.
You Never Know?
You Never Know, which I just love that song, and I love the way you did it.
Yeah.
I think mine was Grease.
Mm-hmm.
Because, first of all, it was such a hit.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And every night, all of these famous people would come and they'd tell us before the show, Cher is here. You know, and then they'd come backstage. That was cool. But I got to fly in on a rope and sing Beauty School Dropout, fly in on a rope. And, you know, it's such a great song. And also Godspell, which we've both done. Yeah. Because we became like a family. Yeah. Just like you did in If Then.
That show seems to lend itself to, right, Godspell. Was it as improv-y feeling at the time too? Like the concept, I don't think I understood from how I worked with. It was the first show. It was the first show I ever did. Actually, oh, I love this. So I was a freshman in high school, and I booked the lead, booked it in the school musical, and the teacher called up and said, "Can you handle this?" I was like, "Of course I can handle this." It was a lot. It was definitely a big challenge. But I remember telling Steven Schwartz, like the second or third time I hung out with him, I said, just as a heads up, Godspell was the first musical I ever did. And he went, "Do you know how many people tell me that?" And I said, "Well, it's the first time I've told you."
Well,
So yeah,
that
I
was a
think
wild thing.
yeah.
That was a wild thing because I had done Fiddler, and then everybody's talking about Godspell. Like you have to be in Godspell if you're
Mm,
young.
mm,
That's the show to be in.
no.
And I had 3 auditions, and they called up and they said, "Your last audition, we just want you to sing. No more improv, no more dancing, no more from the script." So I thought, this is such a funny show. I should do a funny song. So I was working on a song called "It's a Fish" from
Mm-hmm.
the Apple Tree, which is about Adam and Eve having the first baby.
Mm.
And so he didn't know what the baby was. And I called my friend Betty and I said, "Can I borrow your baby for this audition?" And she said, "What?" And I said, "Ara knows me. I've been working on this song called "It's a Fish" for, not for this, but for other things." And I said, "If you let me do this, I'll take you to a fancy lunch afterwards." She said, "Okay." So I pick her up in the cab. I get the baby, right? We go to the theater. I give my music to the musical director. I walk off stage. I get the baby, and I said, "I just got back from a hunting trip and found that Eve had discovered this new kind of animal." And then I went into the song. Took the baby here. I took the baby here. I took the baby here. And then I finished. And then Stephen Schwartz said, "Well, we've not seen that before." I'm so sure. And
Yeah.
he said, "That was very risky and very brave and could have been a disaster.
Yeah.
But instead, it just got you the job."
Oh,
And I went,
like in the
"Yes,
room.
in the room.
Oh, there's nothing like that. That
No
moment.
waiting."
No waiting. I flew out when Fanny at Encores at New York City Center. I
Yes.
was auditioning, and I had put myself on tape here in Eddie with Edward Sayeg here in town, and this was in early December. Put myself on tape. They said, "You have a callback," and I had just driven with my girlfriend at the time up to my parents' house in Sacramento, and they were like, "You have a callback in New York on the 27th of December." So I've got sweating out Christmas, not
Christmas.
eating any of the food because I was worried about, because it's really hot, my restless heart. So I leave my girlfriend at my parents' house, and I fly to New York. Mind you, also the family on the 27th when I was flying, the family was going to the local cemetery to see if they want to get plots in a Catholic cemetery. So my Jewish wife is with my non-denominational parents in a Catholic cemetery while I'm in New York auditioning for Fanny. But it was one of those things. I came in, my raspberry heart and die, and I hit that B, and I was glorious, and I finished, and I great, thank you, and I stepped out, and then they called me back in, and they said, "You got the job,"
I love
and
that.
I said, "Oh, thank
It's the
you,
best.
thank you, thank you, thank you," and then I went home, and the next day I proposed to her.
You
Because
did?
any woman who can go to
Oh,
a
that's
cemetery with your
awesome.
family,
That is
yeah.
awesome.
So that's our story. So
Yeah, I had one other time where that happened when I auditioned for Grease, and the whole creative team was there.
mhm.
And Louis St. Louis was the musical director. And he played, they had me learn a 50s song and then do Beauty School Dropout. So I finished the song, and Louis goes, "Him, him." And I went,
uh,
"No
yeah,
waiting.
yeah.
No waiting
Oh,
is the best."
uh,
So what do you think was the best audition you had and the worst audition you had?
best audition was for Cameron McIntosh for Les Mis for this most recent, the one that Ramin did. Um, I had flown in for this as well,
A
and
lot of flying going on.
well, because I was in LA. I
Yeah.
was in LA, but I called my agents at the time. I remember I said, I have to get back to Broadway, whatever it takes. I have to. LA is just was driving me a little crazy.
Right.
I just wasn't getting the work like I wanted to. And so I finally went back to audition. I went in after Brian Stokes Mitchell. They had nobody cast at this point. They were just sort of doing, it was like an exploratory audition
Oh,
phase.
those.
And they were just checking people out. Yeah, and I went after Stokes, and it was for Angel Ross. And I had worked with Eddie on it too. But we need a sign, come with that call. Like full throated. Tear.
No.
Do you hear the people singing the song? Like it was just this perfect moment of just the tear right when I because it was Lamarck is dead. Like I was really connected, and I finish, and Cameron McIntosh goes, "How the f are you not on Broadway right now? How? And I said, I've been living in LA. I said, but really, honestly, it was that Crybaby was a really hard experience for me, and
sure.
I wasn't ready to come back, but I'm ready now." And I got back to my friend's apartment that I was staying with, and my agents called and said, "You have an offer for Anja Ross. You're the only person cast thus far." But the money was terrible. Because it's Anja Ross. It's like the seventh lead of the show, maybe farther down. And and we were pregnant at the time. And I remember my wife and I, we were like, okay, if we get a 1-bedroom apartment, she was working here in LA. So it was like, oh, we were trying to figure all this out. And then 2 weeks later, I booked If Then. So I said, thank you very much.
Unbelievable.
So I didn't even take the greatest audition of my life, and I didn't even accept the job. But it was one of those moments for me that just felt, well, they have Cameron McIntosh, like, just be very, very complimentary.
And that song's so beautiful.
Oh my God, to sing that score.
My best was my first job, which was Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay.
And I went to an open call.
Mm-hmm.
I had just graduated from college. And a week after I graduated, I went to my singing teacher and I said, "How come I don't have a show yet?" She said, "Bob, they weren't waiting for you to graduate. You had to give it a minute." So I said, okay. So I went to this open call. There must have been 300 guys there. I was like number 150. And I went to breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then came back. And then I sang this song called "I'll Show Them All." And what had happened is I had seen somebody on television sing this song, and whoever it was, I can't even remember, got a standing ovation. I said, I have to get that song. So I loved it. And so I went to Colony Record Shop. And I said, "Did you ever hear of a song called "I'll Show Them All"?" I said, "Yeah, I know. It's from a flop, but it's okay. I can get it for you." So he gets me the music, and I had worked on it for a number of weeks, not for Fiddler, just worked on it. Fiddler came on, "I'm doing this song." So I walk in, and Bach and Harnick were there, and Jerome Robbins, and all these people. And as I was singing at the Majestic Theater, Bach and Harnick would walk around the whole theater to listen to see whether my voice projected. They wanted to hear what the tone was throughout the theater. I thought, oh, this is interesting. And I wasn't nervous because I knew the song. So I finished, and Jerry says, "So what song is that? What's that from?" And I said, "It's called 'I'll Show Them All,' obviously, but it's from a show called Sophie." And he goes, "Sophie? That lasted one night." I said, "I know." He said, "Who wrote it?" I said, "Steve Allen." He said, "Steve Allen?" I mean, like, they couldn't get over it, but it helped me have a little conversation, right?
Yeah.
Then I read and I danced and the whole thing. And then I waited, and I was called back and finally got the job. And a week into doing rehearsals, I said to Jerry Robbins, "Can I ask you a question, like, off topic?" And he said, "Yeah, what is it?" "What is it?" So I said, "I want to know, what was the moment when you said, 'I want this guy. He's the one for this part.'" He said, "I remember exactly what it was." He said, "You sang great. You were adorable." He said, "You were really funny." He said, "You danced fine." And he said, "But it was the song that you chose." I said, "Well," he said, "I remember it was called 'I'll Show Them All.'" And he said, "What I loved about it is that the lyrics of that song could have been sung by Muddle the Tailor."
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, if you knew to choose that song,
Mm-hmm.
you'd know how to play that part.
That's a great
And I
point.
went, oh, good thing
Yeah.
to take home.
Song
right?
choice.
Song choice.
So my worst audition has a lot to do with your best audition, in that it was for Fiddler, for this revival that Bart was directing. You know, this most
Oh,
recent one,
yes, yes,
and I
yes.
went in for Perchik. I honestly,
Now I have everything,
oh,
not
I
only
just
everything.
do not like that song. And I was in the thick of tech with um, Ever After at Paper Mill Playhouse, so I was exhausted, and I worked on the sides, but the breakdown said a John Lennon type. Just in there, like it had a few words and this and this and this. It kind of like John Lennon. I was like, all you need is love. Like I was like, okay. And it's the scene in the cafe when he's talking about, like the people and this, and why aren't you guys, like, what is wrong with you? Like you gotta, take some social responsibility or whatever. And I played it very like, let's all be, like all you need is love. And I finish, and Bart goes, what the F was that? And I went, what? He's like, well, you do good work. I know you do good work. Like, what is that you're doing? And I was like, well, there was this John Lennon thing, like in the breakdown, and he was like, do you know John Lennon? I was like, yeah, like all you need is love. He's like, no. He was militant. He was angry. He fiercely, he really was like an activist. And he's like, I need to believe that you are an angry Marxist Jew. And I go like this,
Ah,
like that, like that. And I go, okay, I get what you're going. Let me do it again. And so I threw some fire in there. And he, okay, great, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. But I just remember him being like, what the fuck was that? Excuse my language. He was like, what? You're not doing anything. And I was like, yeah, because this. And then he was just, I need to believe you're an angry Marxist Jew. I got this is what I got. This is like, but so that was one that it ended well, but it was definitely one of those moments of like taking the breakdown and taking some idea from it, as opposed to really just finding the truth and my own truth within the words.
right,
That,
right.
that was sort of a. But again, when you're in the thick of tech and exhausted, like I'm just grasping at straws, whatever I have to do, it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll go this direction. So,
My worst was the producers.
oh, really?
Yeah. Gary Beach was my good friend, and we
Mm-hmm.
were always in competition with each other. So when I was in a long run and they wanted me to audition, I'd say, call Gary Beach.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with him. They said, call Bob Garrett. So I flew to New York to see him in the show. We had dinner afterwards, and he said, you're the only other person who can play this role other than me. He said, I said, so when you want to leave, will you let me know so I can get
Mm-hmm.
in early? He said, yeah. So I listened to the score, and I decided I was going to write something special for this audition whenever it came up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a song in there called Keep It Gay,
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to take the song That's Entertainment, the crown where the dancing,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and rewrite lyrics as though I was Roger Debris,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So I do things like the clown with his pants hanging down, and I really made a thing out of it. So my agent called the casting director and said, is it okay if Bob does something special in addition to Heil myself? And they said, yeah, sure. He's written something special. So I went to New York, worked with a pianist, took the pianist in, and I had worked really hard. And all my students, I had practiced the song with them to make sure the laughs were there and that was working and the whole thing. And I had worked really hard because I wanted that part. So I walk into the audition. There must have been 20 people
Yeah.
behind this table.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, I should get paid for this. They should each $5 a day. So Susan Stroman said, do you want to start with the special song you've written for us? I said, I'd love to. So I start to sing, and one of those 20 people took out a Whopper, unwrapped it, and started eating the Whopper. And I'm thinking to myself, I flew 3,000 miles to be here, and I'm going to sing to a Whopper? That ain't going to happen. So I said, excuse me, can we stop for 1 second? I'm so sorry, but I really have to pee. I really have to pee. So I'll be right back. And by the way, I just feel so bad that you guys have no break and have no chance to eat. you know? And I said, I'll be right back. I didn't have to pee. And I went and I came back. That Whopper was gone. So it was just my instinct of saying,
Yeah.
I don't want to remember this audition as a
Yeah.
Whopper.
Yeah.
It was so
Did it?
bizarre to me.
Did you feel good about after that point?
Yes.
Okay. And the feedback was
Was
fine.
excellent.
Okay, good.
Gary decided not to leave
Oh, there you go.
because
Gary.
he bought an apartment.
Yep, there you go. That's how it works.
And they offered me the road, and I went, I don't want to go on the
No,
road.
no.
But it was fun preparing for it because I
Mhm.
just loved doing that.
No.
What was the craziest thing that ever happened to you on stage?
Oh boy, so many things, so many things. Oh, craziest. Well, I'll say there. If Then was one of those things where it was definitely the Adina show, you know, and she was carrying the show, and she keeps it very loose. Like, she's very open. I think it's one of her strengths is she's very much her, and so if anything kind of goes wrong, um, uh, she's going to point it out, actually. Like, and she'll chat with the audience about it. So it was my birthday. I'd been working out. I was in good physical shape, and there was a song called "What the F." I don't know if you have bleeping on this or if we're this, but um, so but there's a line: "How'd I end up lying naked with you?" But I always came out and I was in boxers and a t-shirt. Well, it was my birthday. I've been working out. I felt pretty confident. I said, you know what, Adina, it's my birthday. You're gonna get a surprise later. So I decide to take my shirt off
Oh,
for the scene. So what happens is she is singing the song, and then what the mom, and she finishes, and the lights out, and then it comes up, and then I pop out of bed and we start the conversation. She's like, "Oh, I don't know how to do this," and I'm shirtless, and we get a few lines in because she's in her own neuroses over here, her character, and then she finally looks over and goes, "Ah!" and she cracks up. And then she looks at the audience and goes, "He's not normally shirtless. I didn't know you're gonna be shirtless. It's his birthday. He's been working out, so he's shirtless." Whatever. And it was like a 3-minute digression of her, and I was so genuinely embarrassed. And Michael Greif, after the show, I get a knock on my door. "Hey, so we're gonna keep our shirt on from now on." I was like, Michael, it's my birthday. Like, I just, yeah, I gotta keep my shirt on because I was always worried like they didn't have my shirt off because in out of town my shirt off was for like the first couple of performances, and they're like, "You need to put your shirt back on," and I was like, "But I feel like I've been in good shape." Like, yeah. And really the truth was, Michael's like, "I need people to listen at this point and not be talking about you with your shirt off." So I tried to take and make my own directorial choice, and it ended up in like a 3-minute digression of talking. I was like, it's my birthday. It's my birthday soon.
yeah,
I
I'm
don't know.
celebrating. I worked hard for this moment.
I did. So that was the last time I've been shirtless on stage.
My worst, but turned out to be one of my best, was working with Zero Mostel in
Oh,
Fiddler.
my
He
gosh.
did a revival, and I was cast as Muddle, and he was so outrageous and uninhibited
Mm.
that there's a scene where Muddle comes to ask for Seidel's hand in
Mhm.
marriage. And I came in, and "What is it, Muddle? What is it? What is it?" And finally, he takes me and throws me down on the bench, and he starts, "What is it, Muddle? What?" Sitting on my body. And I was like, I cannot believe he's doing this, right? He was so outrageous. He'd do things like in "Do You Love Me?" At the end of "Do You Love Me?" he'd go, one night he went, "After 25 years, it's nice to know." And he takes Golda's hand. He says, "And that night, Tevye had Golda." So my favorite story with him, because he was outrageous, he had cotton mouth. So he had to always put lozenges in his vest and then put them in his mouth just
Yeah.
before he had to sing, so he'd get a little more saliva happening. So he did that. Now he and the musical director hated each other. I mean, hated. So he's doing "If I Were a Rich Man." He's got the lozenge in his mouth, and the lozenge pops out of his mouth and into the eye of the conductor.
No.
So, and he didn't even know it had happened. He knew the lozenge went, but so intermission, the conductor comes backstage and knocks on the door, and Zero opens the door, and He looks at him, he says, "You spit that lozenge in my eye on purpose, didn't you?" And Zero looks at him and he goes, "Yes!" and slams the door in his face. He said, "If I stood there for 20 years and aimed
You could
to
never,
make that."
never. Ah. That's it.
And then the last thing I'll say about him, which is so funny, we'd be doing tradition and he'd have this wonderful monologue. And he got to the point where he said, "You may ask, how do we keep our balance?" So one night we're going like this, and I'm standing there and he goes, "You may ask, how do we keep our balance?" Like right in my face, right? You never knew what this guy was going to do.
Yeah.
But it was fascinating to watch because he was so free.
Yeah.
His comedic imagination just was indicative of who he was.
Yeah. Oh, get to work with one of the greats.
So everybody, I want to thank you for joining the premiere episode of Singers in Sedans Getting Coffee with my very special guest, James Snyder. See you next time.